Good day, everyone. In continuation of discussion about lesson planning, we have here the components of lesson plan. We have the general information, objectives, materials or resources, procedure, and the assessment. To make it clear, let's discuss about these components. First, we have the general information. In lesson planning, we have to put the general information which are the date, class, student level, unit title, lesson title, and the duration of the class. Moving on the objectives. So, what is the objective in lesson plan? Lesson plan objectives refers thorough description of what your student should accomplish during a class. A lesson can be one of the most important components of the lesson plan. Objective define what students are going to learn during the lesson and explain how the learning is going to be assessed. So you have to determine what you want the student to be able to know and to do by the end of the lesson and make it measurable and specific. And also, don't keep it a secret. Next is the materials. Why is important for the teacher to consider the materials in lesson planning? It is because learning materials act as a guide for both the teacher and the learners. Materials can provide a valuable routine in the teaching and learning process. So you need to make sure you anticipate what materials you and your student will need. Why? It is important to carefully select learner support materials because if the teachers were to carelessly select materials, they may encounter problems in their classroom, such as students not learning from the materials or becoming frustrated with them. Also, you need to make sure you organize and prepare all of those materials before class so that you can lead productive, engaging lesson for your student and maximize the effectiveness of your time and resources. Next component is the procedure. So, why is procedure important in lesson planning? It is because lesson procedure is an in-depth explanation of how the lesson will progress in the class. So you need to write the step that you and your student will follow, keeping your objectives in mind all along the way, and you need also to write down the timing you anticipate for each activity to ensure that the current student gets the full lesson to which they are entitled, while not overrunning and causing the following lesson to start late. Next and last component is of the assessment is the assessment. So what is the assessment in a lesson plan? Assessment are a critical step in the education process as they determine whether the learning objectives of a lesson have been met. By showing student understanding of concept, taught assessment enable teachers to see if their teaching has been effective. So, how will you know that students have achieved the objectives? Of course, by giving assessment to the student. You will need to test if your student have learned the objective of the lesson, and it is usually given at the end of the lesson. It is typically a test, but it can also be an essay or a project where the student perform on their own without any guidance from the teachers.
In lesson planning, we have also need to create or build rubrics for classroom tasks or activities that test whether a student or your student has mastered or achieved the objectives you have given. So here are some guidelines for using rubrics. First is to keep exact objective or objectives in mind that you are assessing. Next is to be specific or general as you need to be. Third, share the rubric with your students before they begin working on the task you have given them. Next is to evaluate your students according to the rubric. And if your students have questions about their scores, then refer to the rubric. Lastly, in lesson planning, you have to reflect also on your lesson. How do you know that your lesson was good? Here are some questions in reflecting whether your lesson was good and effective. First, you should know what went well and what did not go well. Next is to know how did your students respond and how did your students do on the assessments you have given them. Next is what would you have done differently? You should also need to reflect on what will you do next and how can you improve. How do you make plans to improve your teaching? I'd like to bring this presentation to a close with a question. What do you do to reflect on your lessons? Please take 2 minutes to leave a comment about your additional information with the topic. You can share your thoughts or ask questions in the comment section at the bottom of this lesson. Thank you for listening. God bless future LPTs.